Yeah, he's got a music loop going. So I just found some royalty-free stuff on YouTube. Oh, here we go. I can hear us now. He's bringing us into the fold. All right, just waiting for them to get the video feed. All right.
It has begun.
Yep. That's my buddy Josh from Dogmite. So here we go. Welcome. Hello, makers of the world, coming to you live in spirit from I through Detroit in the innovative Ferndale, Michigan. This is the Make Something Wonderful podcast, a podcast exploring all the fantastic ways we create. I'm Thomas Tusano.
Matt Carpenter, and this evening we have a special double feature crossover with our friends at Syn Shop, interviewing Nate Bezanson, one of the founding members of i3 Detroit and our current electronics lab coordinator, among many other roles. And if our Syn Shop colleagues like to introduce themselves as well.
Sure, I'm Syn Shop, or I'm Krux, president of Syn Shop.
I am also Syn Shop. I am the mighty Pong.
All right. And would you like to tell the folks at home where they can find you, Pong? And Krux?
You can find us at youtube.com/SynShop, or you can find us at twitch.tv/SynShop. And as a matter of fact, the second hour of this very show that you're watching right now will be hosted at those two places. So either Twitch TV/SynShop or youtube.com/SynShop. And that is where you can find us. Yeah.
All right. Sweet. Okay. So tonight is a very special episode, as Pong mentioned. We are going to be talking about makerspaces, structure versus function, the founding of them, and just really doing a deep dive with that. And for tonight, we called upon what I think is the perfect guest for that, our own storyteller or teller of hazardous tales, as well as one of the founding members, Nate. And so let's see. I mean, we introduced you guys, and you guys did say your roles and your impact on the shop. But are there any particulars that you might like to tell the people at home? Like what were your roles there? Would you like to go more in depth with those?
Oh
yeah, and who do we start with? Let's Nate. Why don't we start with you briefly? Why don't you give the people at home an introduction of what your role at i3 is, or was? Yeah.
All the ones you've had.
So okay, this will be interesting. Over the years, I did not start out as the electronics lab coordinator. So I started out just helping around in whatever ways I could. When we moved to Ferndale and actually got an electronics lab, Phil did that for a little while, and then I took it over. I've been the membership coordinator for a while. I think those are really the big ones. Basically, and then I kind of fix things in the background. Now we have like people who call themselves infrastructure zone who do a lot of that too. So I've been taking off a lot of those multiple hats from over the years, but it's, we just celebrated 10 years of being a space. And I think my involvement with hackerspaces goes back about 2.5 before that. So it's been a long time. A lot of strange stories that we may get to later tonight.
And we're hoping for them. So, Krux and Pong. Krux, I know your current acting president. Were you involved in the founding of an organization of Syn Shop from the get-go, or did you take over from someone, or what was?
Yeah, Syn Shop started out of my garage way back when. So it's like 2010, 2011, sometime where we were starting to meet together. Syn Shop originally started out as a Dorkbot instance, and then we got the Syn Shop name and went on to the hackerspace more. Not just electronics, but pretty much anything. So started out of my garage. We eventually got our space downtown. I wasn't president then. I let one of the other members be president for a while, and then eventually took over president when he didn't want to do it anymore.
As happens.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Pong, how did you or what was your role in organizing Syn Shop, or what is it now?
Okay, so as far as in the very beginning, relatively speaking, I'm a complete noob. I've been going to the shop for about 3-4 years now, something like that. My wife went on vacation. Went on a trip to Disney World actually, and I was like, "Hey, I got a whole week. What should I do?" Hey, I hear this makerspace thing, and so I went down, checked that out, and it was all downhill from there. So yeah, now currently I am one of the director at larges.
Yeah,
I
that's
spent
your official title.
That's my official title. I spent quite a few, a couple of years as a director at medium, and then eventually upgraded to director at large. Um, that's right. Uh, all the Big Macs that'll do it to you. But then we started doing this show last January, and then the world exploded, and the rest you know.
All right. Yeah.
And I have a new aspiration. I want to be known as the director of largesse.
There you go.
All
Heck of
right.
a budget with that position.
Yeah.
So
You have to get a really big business card, like one of those giant cardboard check kind of
like,
things.
yeah. So one of the things that we need to address as far as it goes, we started out. So real quick for the people at home, and this is a contested thing, but to the short and quick of it, there are several viewers we have right now just looking in chat. What is a makerspace, and what's the best way to describe it from the three of you? Like, if you could say in a sentence what a makerspace was, how would you explain it to those viewing right now that haven't been to one?
Somebody like this, because I need at least 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, the quick way that we would kind of describe it, or one always way we like to say is it's kind of like a gym membership with power tools, but it's more than that because what you get with a hackerspace or makerspace, whichever term you prefer, is you also get all of the experience and knowledge of all the other members, and so you can get a garage full of tools, but you can't get a garage full of random people.
Well, you can, but that's considered kidnapping, and it's pretty illegal.
It's frowned upon.
You don't know.
Frowned upon. In polite cultures, yes.
The analogy I sometimes use, I can probably get this in under 10 minutes, is that if you look at the way modern libraries are, that they're so obviously a public good that they're funded by the government, because literacy is important. If you think of where those came from, look at the literary salons of previous centuries, where you had people who were drawn together by the goal of sharing literacy and hanging out with each other people who had these aspirations, and you take that idea and transfer it to power tools, because I think and hand tools too, because I think as much as we all celebrated the coming of the information superhighway back in the 90s and how the cost of literacy was falling to zero and so on and so forth, unspoken, without any press releases or anything, was the cancellation of shop classes, and the passing of a generation of our farmer ancestors and so on, who knew how to do things with their hands, and a lot of us don't have outlets for that now, and so we get that in our literary salons with power tools.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was one thing. Actually, we had for our very first episode, we had a member of he was the head librarian or bookmaster. That's what he was. It was his official title was bookmaster with one of the local Las Vegas Valley schools, and he basically bemoaned some of the same things. The canceling of shop classes and the lack of making things. Seeing a project through to from conception to completion. There was a lot of stuff that he brought up that echoed that. I like that definition of it. But Jim Club with power tools. That's a good elevator pitch, though.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah, people can understand that relatively quickly. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, but you don't go to the gym to have coffee with the other muscle heads or whatever.
I don't go to the gym unless ever.
It's called kidnapping.
Unless it's
yeah.
one with power tools. So I guess a question I would have, and whoever wants to take this one to start with, is there like a particular kind of event or a particular thing that you can point to as kind of this was the catalyst, this is what kind of started me down this road of just really enjoying taking stuff apart, putting stuff together, that kind of thing? Who's to blame, I guess, is the question.
Every adult who raised me. I mean, from the moment I knew what a screwdriver was, those gray goo scenarios when like the nanobots start breaking everything down for its component atoms, and they've forgotten the rest of their programming to put it back together, and they eat the whole world. Imagine like 1 6-year-old worth of that.
1 6-year-old and a Phillips head
Wow.
screwdriver.
Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, I was always the kid that would take something apart. Usually I could put it back together.
Usually.
That came later.
Yeah, I was the only one in the house that could get the VCR to stop blinking 12 o'clock. So, similar situation there.
Now, as for hacking, I mean, if you want to talk about like information security or tinkering with things electronically, there's a whole different story there, and it happens in about 1995 on the BBS. I don't know if I go into that much.
If you want to share the story, we're happy to have it.
How much time should I take? So basically, there's this BBS that was a local call, so I could spend all the time in the world on it because our younger viewers may not know that long distance used to be very expensive, and it ran this software for the Amiga called Excelsior, which was really cool. It was natively multi-line, whereas most BBSs, the other ones I was on at the time, were like single line. You'd call up, you'd read email, write email, upload files, download files, hang up. Someone else would call in and do the same thing. An Excelsior board, this one was called Scimitar, this one had like 6 or 7 modems, and so you could have 6 or 7 people dialed in at a time, and there was a chat system which was like mind-blowing at the time. It was called CB Simulator, because that was what the analogy at the time was for chat. And there was this add-on, this little piece of software that the system operator had installed that gave you the ability to put color codes into your nickname. So you could have, instead of just being Nate, you could be like Red N, Orange A, whatever. And it was, okay, that was fine. Everybody looked badass. And there was this woman on the board named Christine, who I've never met, who just kind of whispered at me one day and said, "You might want to go play with that colorific thing. I think it's capable of things it wasn't intended for." That's all she had to say. And I was like, "Oh, okay, what is it?" And I realized that the color codes, it was like a control character, color, number, and so you could not enter these control characters as a user, because they were control characters into the bulletin board software's own internal programming language. So you couldn't type these because it would be bad if you could enter commands in the BBS's own internal programming language, which of course were now in my nickname, and I could go edit my name and change what was between those control codes and do all of the things that the board could do internally, like clear the screen, beep, pause, emit random text. And so, it's kind of cool when your name is like Rainbow NATE, but it's even cooler when your name is clear the screen, beep, 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 pause for 5 seconds, Nate. Every time you say something in chat, all hell breaks loose. I thought this was the best thing in the world. And then I realized I could do one better, and that was insert modem control codes so that anyone who saw my name in chat, their modem would hang up on them.
So
He was that guy.
So I do have some younger mentees in chat who may not understand what he's talking about. Guys, this is the equivalent of adding and disconnecting, like adding everyone in Discord and then forcing them to disconnect from voice chat. That's pretty much what Nate's describing to translate into Gen Z real quick. Like he was, you were basically phone freaking. What's up? Put that in what?
Put that in Fortnite for me.
Yeah.
So I get this email from the sysop like the following day. What the hell did you do? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And
I've done nothing.
yeah,
Me.
it was a good old time. And from that point on, it was like I discovered a new screwdriver. Nothing was safe. It was like there's every piece of software has something broken about it that you can do something fun with.
Oh man.
Absolutely.
I don't think I've ever. I want to make it brief, but I don't think I've ever actually talked about what dragged me into making real quick. And I just want to say, basically, in high school, they stuck me in shop class because they said you're failing Spanish, you failed Latin. We're gonna stick you in shop class and give you 2 years of intensive shop instead of languages. Okay, you cool with that? I'm like, sure. And I was always the cool upperclassman working on weird fringe projects like building guitars or making speaker cabinets or doing and all the kids would get like super excited, all the freshmen. And then my shop teacher saw this and went, "You're a TA now." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "You're a shop TA now." I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "I'm gonna tell the guys more or less up above that if they ever think of taking you out of shop classes or making you ineligible for them, they're crazy because you would make an excellent vocational educator. You're a shop TA." I'm like, all right, cool. So,
Wow.
yeah.
You weren't too good at Latin.
I was terrible at Latin. So,
Shop is a foreign language.
yeah, exactly. Well, to some people, yeah, it is. So that's why I advocate for it. That's why the show exists. Hooray! But-
You missed your shot though. You could have been a Latin speaker guy.
Latin and
know?
Spanish.
Oh, both of them. Yeah.
Though Spanish is a lot more useful now.
Yeah, I was gonna say Spanish. Yeah.
Io sono capisco l'italiano, so
I
I'm
use
fine.
Latin a lot more than Spanish personally, but
Yeah. I use-
Fair enough.
Rob, yeah, you did. You did just well. Sorry, Rob in the chat making Rob our producer. He's like, I got a C in Latin, and he's making emojis at us. I'm like, so you did just well enough for them to keep you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Rob, you could have gone to shop class.
Yeah, hey, like, he's like, oh man, fucking missed out on that. So, anyway, we appreciate Rob's work behind the camera. Thank you so much, bud. So, and then Pong, I know you've told the phone story before for Syn Shop. Was there something way before that happened that got you into making?
Was there something? Oh, well, okay. So, very similar story. The BBSs that I was on were usually, with the exception of Offworld. I don't know if you remember that one. But with the exception of that one, the majority of the websites that I was on, I was I don't know. I'm sure the statute of limitations is well up by this point. I was the 314 courier for Fairlight, and so one of. I mean, it's low on the but for Animal House 3 in St. Louis. But yeah, so I was doing that when I was real young. I was stupid enough to pay for long distance, but which is ridiculous, and it used to be freaking crazy. But anyway, yeah, so I started out with that, and I got into electronic music and completely forgot all about computers. And then electronic music found out about computers, and then I was like, oh, hey, yeah, computers, I remember those. I used to load video games on tape drives. Yes, okay, great. So I came back to that, basically through MIDI is how I came back into doing computer stuff. And then I watched this one video from a guy named Mr. Pete 222 on YouTube, and he was showing all this stuff about doing sand casting and machining and all that stuff, and that happened to coincide with a bonus I got from work. And then next thing you know, I've got a basement full of lathes and mini mills. So that's kind of where I got the maker bug from. It was kind of video, maker by way of YouTube, by way of music, by way of uh, computers, by way of my dad bought a VIC 20 and totally pissed off my mom, but it ended up worth it in the long run.
Right.
So
What about you? How about you, Krux? When did the bug bite you?
I mean, I was always, the type that would make things, Legos, Connects, Tinker Toys, going out in the garage and taking things apart. My uncle repaired CBs, so that got me into like electronics because made like a crystal radio set and all that when I was a kid. Grandmother had all sorts of like craft stuff, so she had like about 40 sewing machines that were all set up in her attic at one point. So anything to do with fabric arts was there. My mom did pottery in her basement, so learned that. Just always have done it.
Yeah, I gotta give a lot of credit to Lego and sewing and woodworking and all the stuff that all the family did. That was all there as we're growing up.
Very cool.
All right. So, there are a lot of places. So one of the examples I always cite is co-working spaces, but there are a lot of things popping up these days calling themselves hackerspaces, makerspaces. Like Pony Ride comes to mind. Baltimore OpenWorks, I think, who we met at NomCon, great place. But there are some co-working spaces these days calling themselves hacker or makerspaces. What's really the defining feature? Because we're kind of freewheeling with i3, like we're definitely a makerspace / hackerspace, but like you look at some, like what makes something in you guys' mind, using your authority, having been in the scene 10 plus years, what makes a place a maker or hacker space?
Engage super, get off my lawn, power. So all right, I'll start. So I think it's wonderful that people are trying to ride on the coattails of cool. That means we've made it. But to me, a hackerspace is about the governance style. So it's run by its members, it's run by its users. It's not beholden to some corporate overlord. And a makerspace is about the facilities and the tools. So you can have a hackerspace, which is not a makerspace. You can have a makerspace, which is not a hackerspace. But it's important in both of those that they be open. So if something has a bunch of tools but is not open, then okay, it's a corporate R&D lab or a university lab facility or something like that. If you need to pay tuition and be part of some other organization to be there, that's not the same. That's how I divide them.
And by open, you're saying open as in open for all members to use. Like, you don't have experience using this particular tool, come on in and we'll show you how. Is that basically where you're going with that?
I mean, like you don't have to be an employee of the company, like you would if you wanted to use the R&D lab. So it's like you can walk in off the street and through nothing more than promising to take good care of the equipment and help pay the bills. I think that you become part of the community rather than having to be part of something else.
Right. And turn into
kind of weigh in on that. Either of you?
I mean, I've always preferred the term hackerspace. Kind of starting up, you go after like spaces like Noise Bridge in San Francisco, etc. So they're a bit more anarchistic, loose form in their governments. And just like the term hacker from like its original use in like the MIT days, etc. I think makerspace has come into use kind of where people are afraid to use the word hacker versus maker because they feel hacker is going to scare people off.
Yeah.
But really, they're one and the same. One might lean more one way, one might lean more the other way. I've seen a lot of spaces that are named one thing or the other, and they've all been run very different ways. So
Yeah, I found that when you're trying to explain what a space is to someone who has no concept, which one of the words you use to start the conversation definitely kind of changes their initial perception of what it is. You try to get them to the same place in the end, but
Mhm.
I walked into a can of worms I didn't know existed when I first visited Syn Shop, and it caught me off guard. I was like, "Oh," because I was like, "Oh, so this is a really nice makerspace," and someone corrected me in that makerspace was a euphemism to blunt hackerspace and to remove, like, just as you did, Krux. I'm not sure if it was you exactly, but someone did, and or it was in either that or in a Discord chat. It's a term like, or someone said, "Let's not get started on that debate," and then I immediately realized that I just stuck my ankle in a bear trap, um, and so I was like, "Oh, okay." So because I3 is such termed that I had never really, I mean, I'd heard of hacker spaces, but I'd always just assumed that makerspace was the umbrella. So that, and then when I wandered into something completely different, and it was like, oh, surprise, you just opened a thing you didn't even know existed. I'm like, oh god. So I mean, not, it wasn't a bad thing. It was very eye opening, and now I ask, do you guys consider yourselves more one or the other? And what, and that leads to some interesting discussions. So I learned a way to kind of crack people open a little bit more just by learning that there's a whole discourse there. So
I can also point out that in our early days, I3 called ourselves a hackerspace. Period. We used the term makerspace, only as the euphemism to blunt it. We didn't really embrace it, and I think that was because the genesis of I3 was that Russ inquired about hackerspaces and was like, "Oh my God, why isn't there one of these here?" And so the name hackerspace was just part of the vision. And it was only later, I think, as we started to oh boy, for a lot of various reasons, we started to use both terms.
yeah, marketing and the like.
Yeah, and even us, we'll use either term depending on who you're talking to. Yeah, we do try to explain why we call ourselves a hackerspace to people that might not understand. You're talking to, say, the media or something. Yeah,
Well,
their initial instinct is hacker is bad.
I always
But you talk to people at DEF CON, the other way around.
Oh, I'm so jealous you guys are in Vegas. I haven't been to Denver forever, but no, I always try to use both terms rather than one or the other. I will say we're a hackerspace, makerspace, or and then that'll get them perked up. What is the word hacker doing in there? But it also has maker that most people already know that's in the dictionary.
Yeah, we actually have had a couple of people come in. I think when we were doing like one of the last shows when we were still at the shop, we had somebody come in and ask if we could unlock their iPhone or something like that. It was it was totally legitimate business.
it was obviously their phone, right?
Yeah,
Totally
when
there.
when we were downtown, we would get that a lot.
Yeah.
Because the people that would come by in the downtown area, they're not the type of people that are going to go to a hackerspace to build things, etc. They just see that and it's like, oh, well, I need someone to hack into so and so's Facebook account, etc. Or break into this ATM machine. It's like, no, that's not what we do.
And then they're surprised when you're not all wearing ski masks.
Yeah,
And well, trench coats. We're
Yeah.
older, so yeah, we were wearing
Yeah.
trench. Yeah.
yeah. Even where we're at now, we'll still see it every once in a great while. But like at one point, we had a person that they spent like $50 on an Uber to come down to where we're at, expecting that we're just going to hack into something, and they got really mad at us when we said, "No, we don't do that. Why would you think that?" It's like, why would you just show up and not like try to contact us ahead of time, make sure that that's indeed what that we can provide the service that you're expecting, and then send him off on his way.
So that might be
ahead of time. That's just not leet enough.
exactly. So that might be a good opportunity to kind of segue into talking about kind of the history of the spaces. So I have a reasonably good handle on i3 Detroit's history, so I'm going to ask SynShop probably to start with yours, and then Nate will have you kind of run through an abridged history of i3 Detroit.
All right,
I don't-
so like I mentioned, Syn Shop originally started out as a Dorkbot chapter. We were Dorkbot LV, I think. In fact, if you go to Dorkbot's site, they still have a link to the domain that doesn't exist anymore. It was me and a guy I worked with. We were like really into electronics and reading about the community of makers and people tinkering on electronics, etc. And so we started that, and then I got a job someplace, and there was people there that were also looking at starting up a hackerspace, and they're the ones that actually had the name Syn Shop, and they had gone so far as like to register the domain, and so we kind of worked together to start the space, and we were meeting in coffee shops for probably at least a year until me and my roommate at the time we went out to Sacramento to pick up a PDP 1123. It's like 30-year-old mini computer. Thing size of a small fridge, actually a medium-sized fridge.
Yeah.
And we were sitting in a cafe on the way back, on the drive back, and it's like, I have like a garage full of tools. I could just organize them and make it so, they were actually usable by people. And we could actually just start up. And then once we have a space that people can show up to, then it'll happen, And that's exactly what it is. It's like we started having like Saturday meetings and people just showed up out of the woodwork. Eventually one of our members, they bought a new place and then they had this big pole barn in the backyard, and we forcefully took over that. And we're having our meetings there because the meetings were at my place just got to be too big for a 3-car garage. And one of our members, he was working for Zappos, and Tony Shea at the time was trying to revitalize the downtown area, and someone had proposed the idea, so, oh, hey, we should do one of these hackerspace things, and he had piped up, it's like, we're kind of already doing this, we just need a space. And we ended up getting our first space. It was like $1 a month for the first 6 months, which we figured we could swing that all at once. We gave them the $6.
Yeah.
And after
Okay.
that, the price was supposed to go up, and Downtown Project just kind of disappeared, and we couldn't get a hold of anyone. So we were sitting there at the first space for probably the first 3 years without paying any money. Like we didn't have to pay electricity or
You were
rent
hackerspace
or anything.
squatters.
And that allowed us to save quite a bit of money up over that amount of time, and we got to the point where free was too expensive because there was just some problems with the building and in the area. There's the sewage. There was a sewage problem underneath the slab, and the building owner didn't want to fix it. And so you'd have to like open up the front and the back door and make sure there's airflow going through all the time. Only one of the AC units worked. The front door had like this nice alcove that drunk people like to use as urinal, which kind of sucked. Yeah, so we were looking for a new space at that point. It's like, we can afford this and let's just get a better place. And at that point, then Downtown Project showed up and it's like, oh, hey, we want to turn this into like a bar or a restaurant or something. It's like, well, as luck would have it, we're actually looking to move out anyway. And if you guys have another place we can go, we'll look at that. Otherwise, we're going to find our own thing. And turns out we found our own thing and we got the place we're at now. Huge 30-foot ceilings, over twice the amount of space, allowed us to expand quite a bit, and allowed us to get more members because where we're at now is a much nicer neighborhood than downtown Vegas. So we did have some members that just didn't want to go there because it's not the best neighborhood in the world. So
Yeah, that was
that's
on Fremont, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was right. It wasn't right next to. It was like one building over from Fremont Street Experience. So
Okay.
it was like 4th and I forget what the cross street was, but Fremont's probably the closest.
Yeah. So anybody who has been to Vegas in the past, that building or that one street that had the like old Vegas that has the cover over it with the screen, yeah, it was basically like if you keep going past that screen, that's where it was. So
Yeah, it was nice. Like if you were at the shop and you wanted to go get something to eat, there was like a ton of stuff in walking distance. But it wasn't nice because there was no parking down there. We had like a few spots in the back, and that would always be full. And then you would have to go across the street and pay for parking. Yeah, it's where we're at now. We like a lot more because there's plenty of parking. Much nicer space overall. So.
definitely.
That street experience was one of the things I had to see the first time I was in Vegas in '98 for DEF CON. So that's my reference for that part of town is a little bit outdated these days.
I think they actually have a new screen going in.
I'm not sure. I know they don't like 400-pound robots driving around on Fremont Street experience at all. Like,
Lame.
yeah,
I'm not
the PDP-11 I had mentioned, I actually turned it into a robot that can drive around. So it's like a 400-pound mini computer that drives around, and it's great at like events because the thing's electric. It makes no noise, and you can just like sneak up behind people and. Between person and 400-pound robot always wins. So it's great if like someone that's talking to someone and you can kind of just startle them. But
to nudge him a little bit.
yeah, but yeah, they were having none of that when we were driving it around, on Fremont Street.
Did you think that location was kind of helpful with the original growth of the organization? Because it sounds like a place that people would not maybe walk by somewhat regularly. Central to a lot of
We
stuff.
get a lot of out of town visitors. People that maybe are out of town and might not have even noticed the space, but since they happen to be walking around, they saw the space. It's like, oh, I know what one of those places are. I'm going to go in and say hi. We also got a lot of weirdos and crazy people, but we still get out of town people, but they kind of have to go out of their way to actually find us.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
There's one of them now.
What's up?
I said, "There's one of them now on my computer."
Yeah.
It's a different kind of tourist.
Yeah.
Well, I was about to say that's mostly this one's fault, Nate, because he was like, oh yeah, seeing different spaces is great, and I'm like, yeah, it is. Like, I was like, oh hey, I got on a podcast in Vegas. Like, hey, this is gonna be cool. And so then we actually had a viewing party that night when you guys were broadcasting. There was people in the space like, hey, one of us is gonna be in Vegas. Look at him, he's on the big screen. We're so proud. It was funny. So,
exactly like that. Exactly like that.
Welcome to the
I mean, that's one of the things anytime I travel someplace, I always try to look up the local hackerspace. So.
Yep. That's something I've just started doing now that a lot of people from I3 are big into space tourism. So not space tourism, but like makerspace tourism.
yeah, calm down, Elon.
Well, probably space tourism too. I don't know, but
yeah. There might be a few of us. I like terra firma. Thank you.
Yeah.
I like solid things.
I'm growing fond of it every day.
Oh, shit.
So that you want to talk about the history of I3 a little bit? It sounds like there's actually some parallels.
Definitely some parallels there. Yeah. So the prehistory is kind of interesting because you mentioned the a couple of other efforts that combined to create SynShop, and in Detroit's case, there were a couple of other efforts. I had personally tried to start one after coming home from HackDC, which was started by a friend of mine. And I was like, oh my God, we need one of these in Detroit. Got some people together. We looked at our resources, looked at real estate, and we're like, that's really not within our reach right now. But we started up some networking projects and some fun stuff, and then that fizzled. And there were a couple of other similar efforts, from other groups that got a little ways and then fizzled. And so really what's interesting about I3 is that it didn't fizzle. And so that was basically, like I said, Russ saw the article in Wired and said, oh my God, we need one of these in Detroit. came up with the name on his own: Imagine, Innovate, Inspire. And so okay, and registered a domain name, stuck a little WordPress blog up there, and started like announcing meetings, and then spamming emails to anybody he could find who he thought might be interested, which included all of these other fledgling efforts. And so there were quite a number of us who were involved early on that were out of the Ann Arbor 2600 meeting that's been going for 20 some years now. And so it was all these kind of pre-existing networks of people that kind of came together with new organization, new energy, new ideas. And there was a couple of really crucial ingredients there. There was kind of like this fake it till you make it kind of attitude, instead of being timid about what we might not be able to afford. And we got, we were meeting in this coffee shop, trying to figure out, like coming up, filing articles of incorporation and all that sort of stuff. Got bored of meeting in the coffee shop, started meeting in Matt Squitlick's garage. And somebody had the idea, why don't we just build some BristleBots, the stupid little toothbrush head vibrate motor things. And I was like, oh, I hate BristleBots. Because one BristleBot is stupid. But it turns out when you have about 15 of them on the table at one time, they're hysterical. And when you have a couple of people that have never soldered before and so on, that it really galvanized our belief that we like working together, like we like teaching and learning and making stuff together, that this is more than just a pile of paperwork. And that really spurred us to take the next step, look for space. There was the Ann Arbor Mini Maker Fair. That was another big one. Everyone was super excited. Oh my God, we need one of these. How do we help it happen? And a couple of weeks later, we found a space, moved in. And that was in Royal Oak. That was not in Ferndale. So our first space was super close to downtown Royal Oak. It was on 4th Street, like 3 blocks east of Main, and directly across the street from an art gallery, which was just perfect because, like weekends, they'd have art open house things and stuff like that. There'd be all these people around. We just open the garage door and drive something wheeled over there and torment them, and they'd come over and say, what the hell is this? And it was really good. One of the early members, a fellow named Nick, just loved building things that rolled, particularly if they were shaped like food. He'd been out at the Maker Fair in the Bay Area in like 08, 09, saw the cupcake cars, which I guess are actually Burning Man art cars. And I was like, oh my God, can I ride in it? And they said, no, sorry, you got to make your own. Okay. And so he did. And so we would drive the cupcake around Royal Oak. Got pulled over in it once. And that was really great. And after less than a year in that space, A, we had completely outgrown it super quickly. And B, a bunch of building code problems that had been in that building for a long time suddenly got noticed because we were very high profile compared to the artist who had been sleeping there in a loft for the previous couple of years. So we had to move. And that's when we found Ferndale. And it was like, this is so much space. How are we ever going to... Well, we filled it immediately.
That happens. Hackerspace is, expand out to all the available space.
And
It's basically.
yeah, so like within 1 year from April 1st, 2009 was the first the registration of the domain name. Like September, like Labor Day weekend, I think, was move in. October was open house. And the following March, we had to move out. April 1st, 2010 was our first day in Ferndale. That was a hell of a whirlwind first year. And then Ferndale, I think, anyone who's been around knows more of the Ferndale story. And it's I think a lot less turmoil than that first year. Thank goodness.
So I've been to Detroit twice, I believe. One time for about 10 hours, the other time for about 2 days. So I don't really have a good point of reference. So what's the difference between like Ferndale and what kind of an area is it? I guess is where I'm going with that.
Royal Oak and Ferndale are both kind of like nicer upscale suburbs, artsy. like Royal Oak, you used to know it because it was the place with the bondage leather stores. And then, like Ferndale has like the Pride Parade. They're, very kind of progressive and not not downtown. That's for sure. We you know most of the founders lived around the same area, and so I was like, well, let's look for a place in our backyard, and we ended up.
And now we have members that actually own houses not farther than a block from the shop.
Oh yeah, we've
So,
become a real estate phenomenon. Like people move into the neighborhood so they can be walking distance.
yeah.
Wow.
Yep. So I kept looking at a plot of land way back out near, what was it? It's like West End, between 8 Mile and West End, where those buildings are. There was a plot there. I was like, man, I could just drop a tiny house there. I was like, oh,
Oh, we lost him.
Boom.
Yard
Or did I
What?
lose me?
by the
No,
rail
I'm here.
yard.
Yeah, up by the rail yard. There's like a row of like cooker cutty house. You still good, Nate? We can hear you.
Uh-oh.
Uh oh, we might have lost Nate.
There he
There
is.
he
No,
is.
there he is. Okay, he's back. He's back. Okay. So yeah, back by the rail yard, back by the tracks. I was like, oh, just drop a tiny house down that one that you come up 8 Mile, you go West End, and then there's that big tree.
Regular piece of land.
Yeah, that little
Yeah.
that rectangular back there that had the
Yeah. So yeah, I
snake
can
in it.
I can name three, and I think there might be a fourth who've moved into the neighborhood because of the space.
Yeah, I know Evan. I think
Hmm.
Mark is somewhere nearby. No, not like. He's like 10 minutes tops.
Yeah.
Either way.
And then Matt back when he lived here, Orlan, I mean, and
We have 5, 6 mats. I don't know how many. We lost track. They
If
multiplied
we had
it.
enough mats, we could have an entire board of directors of mats. So we must have at least 7.
Yeah, somewhere. They
It's kind of like us with Tim's.
Yeah, we've got a lot of 10.
Yeah. So, all right. Let's see. Oh, so I think we have time for one more before we have to switch streams, and we'll direct everybody to do that. By the way, folks, we're gonna have a quick 10-minute intermission. We're gonna switch over to the Syn Shop channel, and I'll put that all in the YouTube chat for you. But there's one question that you somewhat answered that I wanted to dig a little on, Nate. Is the 3 words? Where did Russ come up with them? How did he just choose synergy words and just buzzwords, and he's like, here we go, and but not to insult us.
for
But
all I know, I have no introspection into that process. I have a feeling that Jamie had some role in that. She was also one of the founding members and more active than I think a lot of people give her credit for. Russ's wife.
I thought you were talking. Okay, sorry. I thought you were
Um,
talking other Mike. So
no, there's lots of Jamies as well, but and so I don't know the specific story from behind those words, but that was like before he started looking around for other people to help with what those were already. So,
It
That's
could have
something-
been dynamic paradigms in click shifting. If it would have been like a couple years later, that would...
oh no, it could have been at that time. It was just looking for something not terrible.
No, I
The
think
3 words appeared in his alphabet soup or something.
there you go.
the other thing that I normally point out to people is we have PS1 and we have Factory 2 and then we have I3, and I just love that if you look at a map, we make a triangle and it's 1, 2, 3. I'm just like, you can't make this up.
That's pretty clever. That is
Yeah.
pretty clever. Yep.
So, all right. So we are getting towards the intermission. I want to give us a little bit of a buffer, so I'm going to go ahead and start the YouTube chat on the transition. Pong, if you would like to work whatever magic you have briefly.
I will.
And more or less, people. So we're getting the ball rolling. We're getting the conversations going. We have some awesome comparisons coming up next on the cities, the philosophy of makerspaces, because we've set the groundwork now. Now you guys have a background for how everything was built up. So next we're going to look at like what did the makerspaces, respectively, Syn Shop and I3 Detroit, grow up out of? Because we have 2 very different landscapes, and we may find some interesting connections. So I'm going to leave that to be addressed after the intermission for anyone who wants to join us. And we've been trying to do this for a long, long time. jump over to youtube.com/SynShop or
That's why-
Or
Twitch.
twitch.tv/SynShop.
Or
Yep.
that. What was the other part to that? It's SYNSHOP. I can spell good.
You got it.
Yeah,
do
there
it.
you go. There
do
we
words.
go.
You do words so good,
Yep.
especially in Latin.
So for my friends in chat, I know I have a couple different Discords. I'm gonna go put that link up there for you. But please join us over there. The conversation is gonna continue, and it's just gonna go from here. So we're gonna take a quick 10-minute intermission. We're gonna end the broadcast here, and you can either go to youtube.com/SynShop or you can go to twitch.tv/SynShop. Either one that you would prefer. So, but keep joining us. There's more show to be had, folks. And please, we're working on getting our custom URL. So if you guys want to like the video, subscribe, put us up in the algorithm so that we can get our algorithm or get our URL and make our social media pushes that much easier and reach more people to bring the message of making to. So, folks, for now, my sign off, and I'll see you guys in a few minutes. This is Make Something Wonderful. Keep being excellent to each other, and we'll see you over on the Syn Shop channel. So, Rob, if you want to go ahead and play us off, sir. So, and I will put that up in chat for everybody.
Cool. Are we out?
Not yet.